The Sims 4 Enchanted by Nature expansion pack is about to release, and while the new gameplay, CAS, and build by items are incredible, the lore is on a whole other level. In this video, I'll walk you through everything you need to know about the world of Innisgreen and its magical inhabitants, plus hidden secrets, Easter eggs, and even some surprise goth lore updates. Yeah, this pack went kinda hard. But before we jump in, a huge thank you to the EA and Sims team for providing me early access to the Enchanted by Nature expansion pack as part of the EA Creator Network. While this video is considered sponsored due to that access, I was not paid, nor did EA have any input or prior approval on this video, so everything you hear is entirely my own opinion. As always, if you enjoy the video and want to see more deep dives like this, please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below with your favorite moment. And don't forget, after you subscribe, click the bell icon so you never miss an upload. Alright, let's get started. Welcome to Innisgreen, a lush, enchanting isle filled with magic, mystery, and old world charm. If the name didn't give it away, Innisgreen draws heavily from Celtic culture, with a touch of fairy magic woven throughout. Fitting, since fairies have deep roots in Celtic folklore themselves. The word Innis means island in Gaelic, so Innisgreen literally translates to green island, perfect for this vibrant natural world. The island is divided into 3 distinct neighborhoods, each with its own story and style. First up, the coast of Ardmore, a lively seaside village and the island's main tourist hub. Ardmore is a play on the Irish phrase Amor, which means good luck. That fits perfectly considering the town's central landmark, the Glen Nhoam, is said to bring good fortune to anyone who pays their respects. To the northeast lies Spruce Grove, a peaceful haven for nature-loving Sims who prefer life without the constraints of 4 walls and a roof. Here you'll find native plant Sims and mysterious magical monuments hinting at deeper secrets within the forest. And the true heart of that mystery is hidden deep in the ancient sylvan realm of Everdew, where fairies reign, working to preserve the balance of nature and ensure harmony is maintained. The history of Innisgreen stretches all the way back to the dawn of the world, and surprisingly, it connects key pieces of Sims lore we've known for years. So let's go back to the beginning. Long ago, when the world was young, a spirit of the wild known as Mother Nature wandered the untouched forests of Innisgreen. Using the power of the full moon, she poured her emotions into a quiet spring, infusing it with so much life and magic that, legend says, the spring awakened and gained a mind of its own. From this font of pure emotion, the fairies were born. Together with Mother Nature, they nurtured the land, guarding its balance and protecting its magic. To watch over her sacred garden, Mother Nature shaped the spirit from the soil and named it Spruce. Together, they cultivated the land, and over time, a deep and loving bond formed between them. But eventually, Spruce grew jealous of Mother Nature's power. They longed to create life themselves, and eventually gifted Mother with children of their own making, plant Sims and the tree that birthed them. Shaped in her image, these beings were pure but incomplete. Without her divine spark, their power faded with the seasons like petals on the wind. Still determined, Spruce tried again, this time creating the gnomes, tiny, mischievous, nature-loving beings full of spirit. For generations, gnomes, fairies, and plant Sims lived in harmony across Innisgreen, guided by Mother Nature and Spruce. Then came the Sims. Stories of a magical island spread across the sea, and among those who heard them was a young prodigy named Captain Fishbones. He gathered a crew of nature-loving nomads and set sail in search of the legendary land. Miraculously, they found it, but due to his inexperience, Captain Fishbone ran his ship the Callioch aground. The wreckage remains to this day. Stranded but undeterred, he and his companions founded the seaside village of Ardmore. For decades, fairies, gnomes, plant Sims, and normies, as the fairies called them, lived peacefully together. Their cultures blended, giving rise to new traditions of outdoor living, gardening, and apothecary. But the gnomes, who revered Spruce as their creator, sensed their maker's growing jealousy. Determined to prove their loyalty, they rebelled, descending upon Ardmore in an uprising that would come to be known as the Great Gnome Wars. The fairies and Sims joined forces to stop the rebellion. Mother Nature, furious at the betrayal and desperate to prevent further unrest, took decisive action. She ordered the fairies to inanimate the gnomes, turning them into stone statues frozen in time. From that moment forward, gnomes could only be awakened through fairy magic, and only under strict conditions. But not all gnomes were caught. A few escaped, forming a secretive group known as the Evil High Gnome Council, devoted to spreading mischief and mayhem. Their antics are most famously unleashed during Harvest Fest, when magical pranks spike around the world. Mother Nature and Spruce clashed over her actions. What began as a disagreement deepened into heartbreak, and their once loving bond was severed forever. The Sims of Admor, shaken by the Great Gnome War, began to fear all magic. To preserve peace, Mother Nature formed the Fairy Council, appointing the Fae as guardians of balance across Innisgreen. Under their guidance, the use of fairy magic was formally outlawed within Admor, marking the beginning of a fragile but necessary peace. With that act, Mother Nature swore to never again intervene in mortal affairs. Decades passed, and with the fairies now confined to Everdew, their presence faded into legend. Admor transformed into a quaint tourist town, known less for ancient magic and more for its quirky tales of gnomes and pixies. What was once sacred became storybook, and the truth blurred into folklore. The Sims of Admor erected a statue to honor the gnomes of legend, and museums, exhibits, and gift shops soon followed. And that's when we, the players, arrive on the island of Innisgreen. Honestly, there's so much lore in this expansion pack. In fact, there's so much that the Sims team actually updated the in-game notebook just to help you keep track of it all. All those little story fragments that you've been seeing, they're in there, waiting to be discovered. Outside of the story I just recounted, there are some interesting tidbits brought up in the Fable quests, this expansion's questline, that reveal some very curious things about established lore. Delivering the News tells the story of Don Lothario from The Sims 2, and how, after failing to woo Bella Goth, invited her to his home in a last-ditch attempt to win her over. But the poem places the word innocent in quotation marks, casting doubt on Don's motives. And then there's the final line. Was she abducted? An act she conducted, no Lothario had dawned on them. The grammar is so vague, it's hard to pin down what it's actually saying. Does it imply Dawn orchestrated Bella's abduction? Or that she planned her own disappearance? Or perhaps no one ever suspected the real Lothario? It's deliberately unclear, but is the Sims team retconning that Dawn was the villain in all of this? Man, I just released a video about this and apparently it's just wrong now. Stubborn Misfortune tells the story of Nancy and Jeffrey Landgrab locked in a classic marital standoff, arguing over what to spend their fortune on. But things took a turn when both of them tried to outsmart the other, each resetting the passwords to their shared bank accounts, which ultimately locked them both out. While pretty funny, this story calls into question whether Jeffrey really is the kind, level-headed husband we've always thought he was. Maybe he's just as sly and manipulative as his wife. Rise and Shine tells the story of Bob and Eliza Pancakes, teetering on the edge of divorce. Eliza had enough of Bob's lazy, unkempt lifestyle, and Bob just doesn't do much about it. One day, he promises to stay home and clean, but classic Bob, he doesn't. That night though, something strange happens. The entire house is spotless. And it keeps happening. Night after night, the house is cleaned, and surprisingly, their relationship starts to improve. Eventually, Bob discovers the truth. Fairies have been secretly cleaning his home. So he leaves them grilled cheese sandwiches as a thank you because yes, canonically grilled cheese is a favorite fairy snack, despite the fact that they don't need to eat. What makes this story so great is that it hilariously suggests that fairies are the reason their marriage is still intact, which honestly makes total sense. One last thing, and it's not from a fable, but it's worth mentioning. One of the townies we'll talk about later casually mentions that fairies and werewolves are close friends. This makes perfect sense given that both are born from the magic of the moon, but fairies seem to have no correlation to spellcasters, so it might just be that the two crossed paths and became kindred spirits. That being said, Lie Waiting is a fable that retells the classic Boy Who Cried Wolf, only this time the wolf in question is none other than Greg, the infamous werewolf from The Sims 4 Werewolves. In the story, a mischievous kid repeatedly claims he's been bitten by Greg, stirring panic in town, until the villagers catch on that he's lying. So when the night finally comes, when Greg really does get fed up and bite him, no one believes a word he says. But this does subtly suggest that Greg might not be the mindless menace he's made out to be. In fact, it implies he may have more control over his emotions than we've previously been led to believe. Or hey, maybe it's just a fairy tale. Okay, now with the backstory covered, let's break down the stories behind all the new townies in Enchanted by Nature, because not only are there some brand new ones, but some old friends have returned. In Admor, you'll meet Glen Nhoam, the town's resident gnome expert. A clumsy loner goofball, Glen spends most of his time running the Num Num stall, a quirky little food and curio stand set up right next to the Great Gnome statue. There you can buy gnomes, obviously, as well as a selection of food items handpicked by Glen, all based on what he claims are gnome-approved favorites. In his free time, Glen fancies himself a bit of a writer, with a maxed out writing skill to back it up. He's currently working on a new tale of star-crossed lovers titled Gnomeo and Gnomiette, which he proudly claims is a sequel to his widely successful blog, Much Ado About Gnome Thing. Glen reveals he's the direct descendant of the legendary Captain Fishbones, and the old Captain's Quarters fish shop, it once belonged to the infamous pirate himself. Glen starts the game with no relationships whatsoever, which fits perfectly with his loner trait. He also has a level 8 handiness skill thanks to his love of crafting gnomes, which he proudly sells at his stall. I'd call his home at 8 Gnomeco Street a veritable gnome museum if there wasn't an actual gnome museum right across the street. Either way, Glen's obsession with gnomes is anything but subtle. Glen is notably asexual, showing no interest in romance or woohoo, so dating him might be off the table. His one true love, it seems, is of course, gnomes. He also serves as one of Innisgreen's Fabulists, a group of storytellers dedicated to preserving and sharing the island's ancient fables. Glen narrates both My Sleeping Giant and Rise and Shine, which we've already covered. My Sleeping Giant tells the story of a towering gnome who locked himself away to avoid being kicked by mischievous children. But in his isolation, the flowers he once cared for withered from neglect. The story ends with you awakening the Great Gnome statue, which once awakened, the gnomes hail as their long-lost savior, and from then on, you'll be able to occasionally appease it for special rewards. Over at 42 Normfair Drive, you'll find the Ladipo family, Ayo and Flora. This married couple recently moved to Admore with their daughter Iris, but they're struggling to adapt to island life. Ayo is a self-assured neat-freak geek working their way up the tech guru career as a computer whiz. Before settling down, they were in a relationship with Elric DeMuray, the bartender at Gringle's, but it didn't end well. The two actively dislike each other now, and Ayo avoids talking about it altogether. Flora, on the other hand, is a cheerful, materialistic, and family-oriented digital artist working from home as a freelancer. Together, they represent a modern tech-driven lifestyle that stands in sharp contrast to Admore's nature-centric culture. And that clash becomes even more apparent when you realize someone important is missing. Their daughter, Iris, is no longer living with them. You might recognize her from the Enchanted by Nature trailer, which quietly tells the story of how she left home. It started with the love of gardening and a dislike for technology. Flora, eager to nurture Iris's passion, kept bringing home more and more houseplants even as Ayo grew increasingly frustrated by the mess. When she expressed her desire to become a nature nomad and fully embrace the wild magic of Innisgreen, her parents let her go. Now, Ayo insists it's time for Iris to return, clearly revealing they still haven't come to truly understand their daughter or the life she's chosen. Flora, meanwhile, believes she'll come back when she's ready and has even started to soften towards nature herself. At first glance, you won't see Iris on the map, but if you explore Everdew, you'll find her wandering among the fairies. Despite what the trailer suggests, Iris isn't a fairy yet, but it's clear she dreams of becoming one. She's a mystical loyal bookworm who by sheer chance met the fairy Nadya Kishka at a fairy house soiree, an encounter you'll recognize from the trailer. Nadya is a romantic, music-loving whirlwind who aims to become a master musician. She may be a bit chaotic, but she shares Iris's deep love for nature and magic. The two bonded instantly, and Nadya wasted no time inviting Iris to move into her treehouse-style arbor abode. Though Iris misses her parents, she doesn't regret her decision to leave. The nature of Iris and Nadya's relationship is a little unclear. While the relationship panel labels them as close friends, Iris refers to Nadya as her person, a phrase that could imply romantic involvement. And in Kaz, she said so she can't become pregnant or produce milk. That quietly makes her one of the first non-reproductive female townies in The Sims 4 by design. What's particularly noteworthy is how this detail isn't treated as a defining trait of her character. It's not used to explain her personality, her relationships, or her role in the story, it just exists as a natural part of who she is. And in that way, it normalizes aspects like infertility or non-reproductive identity without attaching stigma or making it a dramatic plot point. And while she's found peace in the forest, things aren't all harmonious, because Nadya, she has a not-so-subtle dislike for the next sim we're gonna meet, Joe Trader. One of Innisgreen's other fabulists, Joe is a chaotic presence who, like Iris, doesn't have a fixed home in Admore. Instead, you'll usually find him hanging around the fable boards ready to spin a tale or stir up trouble. Despite what his name might suggest, Joe doesn't actually run a stall or sell anything. Instead, he introduces you to the island's trading system, where you can exchange specific items with the Fabulous in return for special rewards. And yes, his name is absolutely a pun on Trader Joe's. This is The Sims after all. Joe is an outgoing, disruptive kleptomaniac who despises gardening and thrives on mayhem. He's essentially the island's agent of chaos, and he seems to like it that way. He and Nadya don't get along, plain and simple, but the two were previously in a relationship, but things have since soured. Nadya now refers to him as a traitor, though the exact reason behind their falling out remains a mystery. As a fabulist, Joe recounts the fables Against All Odds and Delivering the News, which we talked about earlier. Against All Odds is a playful twist on the classic Tortoise and the Hare story, except this time, it's a hyper-competitive freezer bunny and a surprisingly clever chick locked in a trash posting competition on social media. Over in Spruce Grove, at a cozy little lot called Gimli Gardensbrook, you'll find lovers Eric DeMuray and Todd Attenberry. Yes, the Apothecary Todd from The Sims Making Magic. Back in The Sims 1, Todd was one of the 3 iconic Magic Town vendors, always standing next to his wagon of wares with a potion for every occasion. But in Enchanted by Nature, Todd appears much younger, and he's still very much in the business of brewing and selling elixirs. This time, you'll find him at a modest little stall called Apothecary Todd's Cures and Elixirs. Interestingly, Todd mentions that he dreams of putting his wares in a wagon and taking a show on the road, something longtime fans will immediately recognize as a nod to his future self in making magic. It raises questions about whether Innisgreen is set before the events of The Sims 1, but we'll come back to that idea later. For now, let's keep the spotlight on Todd. Todd is an ambitious genius with one goal: mastering the art of apothecary. And judging by his maxed out skill level, he's pretty much done it. Todd is also a fabulist, and tells the fables Be Kind, Unwind and Lee Waiting, which we spoke about before. Be Kind, Unwind tells the story of a couple who spent so much time outside, they eventually turned into worms. The punchline? Well, it's the famous meme of girlfriends asking their partners, would you still love me if I was a worm? Speaking of partners, Todd's relationship with Elric DeMuray seems to be relatively new. Elric, as it turns out, is actually a fairy, though that's not something he shares freely. He's a gloomy bookworm who loves the outdoors, embracing a life of natural living and garden-grown peace. He works as a mixologist and has a deep appreciation for Spruce Dairy's slower pace. Before moving in with Todd, Elric was the bartender at Gringle's, the local pub, and had a brief relationship with Ayo Ladipo. The two are no longer on speaking terms, and when asked why he left the job, Elric says word got out about him being a fairy, and he didn't want to deal with people constantly begging him for fairy dust. Which does imply Ayo broke up with Elric after they found out he was a fairy, which makes us dislike Ayo even more. We learn that Elric is considering giving up his life as a fairy, not out of bitterness, but because he's never been drawn to the emotional or mystical aspects. For him, it's always been about connecting with nature, something he feels he can still embrace as a regular sim. Todd naturally supports his decision, though he does mourn the loss of his easy access to fairy dust. Over in the magical realm of Everdew, we're reunited with a familiar family from The Sims 2 and 3, the Summerdreams. Titania and Oberon Summerdream serve as the young ruling couple in Everdew, overseeing its balance and magical order. Their names are references to the king and queen of fairies in Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. Oberon is an active mystical plant enthusiast with a deep desire to build a lasting legacy, while Titania is a good-hearted but non-committal slob currently pursuing mastery in apothecary. Their marriage? Let's just say it's complicated. Much like in The Sims 3 Supernatural, their relationship is on shaky ground, a notable contrast to the more united front we saw back in The Sims 2. But what's even more surprising is that their children Puck and Bottom are nowhere to be found. Instead, the couple is raising a young girl named Mara Summerdream. And yes, this is that Mara, the very same Mara who grows up to become the Fairy Queen Mara in The Sims Making Magic. Mara hasn't earned her wings just yet, but she's already dreaming big, openly wishing to become Queen of the Fairies one day and hoping to be the fastest of them all. A clear nod to her status as Magic Town's best toadstool racer. The presence of both a young Mara and a younger Todd Attenberry strongly suggests that Innisgreen takes place before the events of The Sims 1. Titania and Oberon raise Mara, who eventually becomes Fairy Queen, while Todd perfects his craft as a potion vendor. As for Titania and Oberon, being fairies, they would have continued their long magical lives, eventually settling in Veronaville, solidifying their marriage, and having Puck and Bottom Summerdream, who we meet in The Sims 2. Which of course means that the Titania and Oberon we see in The Sims 3 Supernatural are from an even earlier point in their lives before they had young Mara. In The Sims 4, however, Titania developed her love of apothecary from a rather fiery incident. She contracted the burning passion ailment, an affliction that caused her to uncontrollably flirt with everyone she encountered. Which, to be fair, isn't quite far off from her usual behavior, but it did spark quite the scandal back in Chestnut Ridge. Since then, she's turned to the apothecary arts. Titania is also known for secretly enchanting gnomes to clean her castle, a fact that she thinks Oberon is blissfully unaware of, but he absolutely knows, but says nothing, likely to keep the peace. As for Oberon, when I say he's a plant lover, I mean it. The man cannot finish a sentence without referencing plant rights, plant emotions, or how underappreciated ferns are. Also, while it's not explicitly said, Titania and Oberon are likely part of the Fairy Council, as they're the highest ranking fairies in Everdew. Its liaison, however, is Care Wren. Care is a sharp, no-nonsense fairy with big ambitions and a perfectionist streak. Karen's name is of course a play on Karen, a stereotype often associated with bossy or pretentious behavior, and her style definitely leans into that vibe, but personality-wise, she doesn't really act like one. Oddly enough, she's both a foodie and a grilled cheese gourmand, which, if you think about it, feels a bit contradictory. It's actually Care who reveals one of the expansion's funniest bits of lore: fairies don't technically need to eat, but they're absolutely obsessed with grilled cheese. Like many of the Fabulists, Care doesn't have a permanent home. Instead, you'll usually find her near the Mossvale Fairy Hub. She's the storyteller behind the Ground Jewels and of course Stubborn Misfortune, which we discussed earlier. The Ground Jewels shares Mother Nature's belief that the earth and soil, often dismissed as trash by Sims, are in truth priceless treasures. And it's through Care Wren that you'll uncover Everdu's deep magical connection to both Sylvan Glade and the Forgotten Grotto. Care is close friends with another Fairy Council member, the mystical Zhaleh Amani. Like Care, Zhaleh doesn't have a home of her own. Instead, she can usually be found near the Everdu Fable board, sharing stories and spreading a little whimsy wherever she goes. Zhaleh is a cheerful, mystical vegetarian fairy with an endless love for flowers and mushrooms, the less fun kind, sadly. As a Fabulist, she tells the tale Plants Lie Here, a cautionary tale about two neighbors and their dueling gardens. When both gardens wither, instead of taking responsibility, the neighbors blame pixies for their misfortune. Their refusal to own up to their mistakes ultimately leads to a harsh and unforgiving winter. And so we come to the final two pre-made townies in The Sims 4 Enchanted by Nature, but I've already told you all about them. Mother Nature and Spruce Almighty are two powerful Sims that can be temporarily summoned while exploring Innisgreen. Spruce, otherwise known as the Garden Pal, can be summoned at the Glasswood Tree right at the heart of Spruce Dairy Grove. Spruce uses they-them pronouns and is a hot-headed romantic who unsurprisingly loves the outdoors. As I mentioned earlier, Spruce is the creator of Plant Sims, Gnomes, and Plant Gnomes, a cheeky little Easter egg found in one of the Build Buy items. Spruce insists they weren't in the wrong during the Gnome Wars and even throws a bit of subtle shade at Mother Nature for how things played out. They express frustration over being miscast as a villain, and there's even a rumor that Spruce may have turned some Sims into mushrooms. The ones growing near their tree do talk after all, and they don't sound too happy. Spruce is also the final Fabulist you'll meet in Innisgreen and is the narrator of Not Mushroom for Error, the fable that forms the backbone of Innisgreen's origin story, much of which we covered earlier in the video. After everything that's happened, Spruce still longs to return to the loving embrace of Mother Nature, a quiet but powerful sign that they truly regret what happened. And speaking of Mother Nature, she's a central figure both in myth and gameplay. She can first be summoned temporarily during the quest to become a fairy, but you'll be able to speak to her more regularly after either completing your transformation or by choosing I Believe in Baragony at the Fairy Circle, which unlocks at the end of the Rise and Shine Fable quest. Mother Nature is cheerful, outgoing, and a lover of the outdoors. Exactly the kind of warm, nurturing presence you'd expect from a living embodiment of nature itself. As perhaps the closest thing The Sims has ever had to a deity, she cannot become pregnant. But yes, you can still woohoo with her, you absolute perverts. She also boasts maxed out gardening and charisma skills with a single adorable point in comedy, a detail that somehow feels perfect for her. Oh, and apparently she broke Everdu, making it so that it could never snow there. And with that, you now know everything about the lore hidden and enchanted by nature. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for taking this journey with me. Many players are likely to meet Mother Nature, Spruce, and the magical cast of Innisgreen before they ever uncover the deep, sprawling lore behind them. So do me a favor, send this video to anyone who wants to learn more or who claims The Sims 4 has no lore, because this expansion is truly the start of what I hope is the future of storytelling in The Sims. If you've got your own theories, or if you disagree with mine, let's hear it. Drop them in the comments below. Creating these videos, keeping up with weekly shorts, and balancing a full-time job is a lot. So if you'd like to support the channel and help me keep going, please consider joining my Patreon. The link's above and in the description below. And to my current patrons, thank you. Your support truly means the world to me and you keep me going. And one last time, thank you again to EA and the Sims team for giving me early access. Also, if you want to hang out live, watch me play The Sims and other cozy games, come say hi on Twitch at twitch.tv/Mynameisgonz. I stream every Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and I'd love to see you there. Alright, stay curious, stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next one.